If I can make this hard time just a little bit easier for a family, then that's worth it. Good morning. Welcome to another in-depth work week as a medical social worker working at a children's hospital. I figured I would just get straight into the workday for this video, and I actually started Monday by going to the dentist, so I was a little bit late getting into work. But as soon as I did get into work, I checked the census. I talked about this in my last in-depth video, but Mondays always have the most change in the census since it comes off the weekend. Census is just the big long list of patients who are on my floor, and by looking at it, I can see who is still there, who maybe was discharged. I can review people's charts and see if anything happened over the weekend, and I can check if any new families got assigned to me. Honestly, today I had a lot more discharges than new people. My caseload really dwindled down a lot, I guess just coincidentally. Since I came in late, I had to do this really fast, and then I went to the ICU rounds where we learn just about every patient in the ICU, learn a little bit about like plan of care, kind of what's going on for them, so that we can figure out how to best support their families through it. Afterwards, I touched base with the outpatient social worker that works with us about ways to support some of the discharged families that I mentioned that discharged over the weekend. And then I attended social work huddle, which is whenever all social workers just meet together in a random hallway. I guess it's not random, it's the same hallway every time, to discuss anything that needs to be discussed during the day, any announcements, anything like that, kind of just see each other. Afterwards, in the afternoon, I checked in with a family who is staying for another month, and they already know that they're going to be here for another month, and so it's just a lot to process. I checked in with a family who was moving from the ICU to the step-down unit, so feels like progression, but also you have to know a whole new care team, a whole new unit, so it can definitely benefit from emotional support in that time as well, and even logistical support. I checked in with a family via telephone who doesn't live local, just for updates on how they're doing and to check in, see if they needed anything. And I also attended my group supervision for social workers. It was just 2 of us at group supervision today, so it wasn't quite a group, but it was still very good. We just review cases, talk about anything going on, talk about our days, anything we're struggling with. We reflected on the training from last week too. Hello, it is Monday after work. I'm actually leaving work late today because I had a dentist appointment this morning, and so a lot of my hours, it's probably gonna be like half, but a lot of my hours after work today are gonna be sitting in traffic to get home because I drove myself today. I didn't ride with Zach, and I can't park on site, so it's this whole thing where it takes me forever to get home. And then since it's already just gonna take me so long to drive home, I'm also just gonna stop by the library just to add length to the trip so I can pick up a hold and also give them a book back that's due. But just wanted to say hello. Welcome to Monday after work of a full work week.
People knew her by her will, to make it whatever she put her mind to.
You know it's time for business because I have my Halloween Town sweatshirt on. And I also have my salad that I made today. I just got out of the shower. I don't know why that felt like the proper order of things was to make the salad, dish up the salad, then take a shower and now eat the salad, but it did feel like the proper order of things. This night is a little bit funky because it is now 7:17 p.m. and it's pretty late because I got home pretty late. I think I explained this. I had a dentist appointment this morning. So not only did that mean that I had to drive myself, which means that I have to park off site and shuttle to and from the hospital, which takes a long time, but it also meant that I got into work at like 9:15 today instead of the usual 8 a.m. and so I stayed later, but then it also took me longer to get home, which is how it is so late now. But remember, we still have time after work, even if we get home from work late, you know? So I actually made dinner, which is the first time that I feel like I have been able to non-stress, just make a meal in the evening. And I think that is because I've been running so much in the evenings, but then I don't know what I've been doing on the days that I haven't been running. Like, why have I not been? I don't know. It just feels a lot different. But having my half marathon finished, I think I'm gonna do a different video talking about the half marathon and also talking about my like plans going for the future as far as running goes, which are hopefully exciting. But now that it's finished, I am taking like a rest week basically, and so there may not be as many workouts and stuff, if any workouts and stuff, going on in this video that maybe there would sometimes be. But I mean, I'm cool with that. After running 13.1 miles, body definitely needs some rest. This salad that I made is good. It's very strong on the basil though, which I do like basil, but it's very strong on the basil.
Shining brighter, waking up and
turned into a little joint Tuesday, Wednesday session here. Tuesday honestly was a super duper slow day for me because the census is high, and I mentioned this because it was true last time I did this video too. There's not a lot of turnover between the days. So even though I had a lot of discharges over the weekend, on Monday, the people who came in just weren't my families. But then with the high census, that just means there's not beds for more people to come in at the moment. There's just a lot of sick kids. So I mostly just kind of walked around and checked in with the families that I already had, but most of them, nothing had changed since the day before. So it was a pretty slow day for me, which is, you know, good. Wednesday, I did have several new patients, and this included 2 families who were there for surgery on surgery days. I try not to overwhelm families with information because whenever you're worried about your child getting open heart surgery, you don't retain all too much information. The things I do check in with families on are parking and also where they're staying that night. Sometimes families who are local prefer to just stay at home, but also lots of families' comfort zone is to be able to stay in the hospital with their kid, and so some rooms they can just stay next to the bed. You know, it's not comfortable, but at least you're there and you're in a room. And then some rooms that are more of an open ICU setting, we do have sleep rooms that are available for families, but I kind of help navigate like getting families into those sleep rooms if they need them. And then also what's big on my first introduction is just introducing myself and my services as a social worker, so that as we come in contact throughout the rest of their admission, they already know who I am and what I'm doing. There's a thunderstorm happening, so if you hear that, sorry. It's so dark out there. But I wanted to, I guess, talk about this aspect of my job because I didn't think I could like fully do it justice in a voiceover. But something that occurred quite a few times in the last few days of the week, which is kind of why I wanted to talk about it instead of show them, was having to have a lot of hard conversations with families. And I feel like that's the euphemism, if that's the right word, that I use for talking about like end of life situations and bereavements and grieving and preparing for grieving, because this is an aspect of my job that I haven't fully had to learn how to do yet. I mean, thankfully, but also one that is so intimidating to me and that is very new to me as well. And so part of being a social worker on the floor that I am on is that a lot of the kids are very high risk. I don't know if I mentioned it this video, but I work on the floor with children with cardiac diagnosis, medical problems being treated by cardiologists. So that can range from congenital heart defects, which have such a broad spectrum of acuity of prognosis. You know, someone can have an ASD or a VSD that self-resolves and it never has any symptoms, it never affects them in any way. Some people can have like a hole like that, that's what those are. I've learned a lot of medical terms since being on my floor. Someone can have a hole like that and it maybe does require open heart surgery to fix, but then they just have the open heart surgery when they're a baby, which is a huge deal, but then the rest of their life maybe not be affected. Whereas there are people who have single ventricles, meaning like they have half a heart, and they can still have surgical intervention and can live for much longer, and also at the same time they're very high risk. Or just even with people with cardiac diagnoses, sometimes unexpected things can happen, and whenever someone is in an ICU for those reasons, it's kind of they're not doing well, you know. Along with that, sometimes it may be people who just have sudden cardiac arrests. Maybe they don't have any kind of cardiac history ever before, but they have a sudden cardiac arrest and now they're in the ICU, or sometimes in the step down depending on what happens and how long they're down for. All of that to say, there are like very medically severe, risky things going on every single day, and sometimes that does lead to tough decisions of if a family needs to choose whether they're going to withdraw care or not, if a family needs to choose whether they're going to continue with another surgery, even if maybe it's going to just cause the child to suffer more and has a low percentage of being successful. Maybe that's a family learning that their child is no longer a surgical candidate for anything. There's no other surgical interventions that can be offered to them. Maybe that's even just the fact of parents sometimes learning the cardiac diagnosis. Lots of times it's caught prenatally. Sometimes the baby is born and then the cardiac diagnosis is caught. And so there's just a lot of processing and a lot of coping in those times. And that is something that my role is a part of, but it's also something that I feel like it's kind of vulnerable to say, like, I don't know if I'm good at yet, because it's so different from anything that I've had to do before. And I just feel like at a loss of words so often, because what do you say to a grieving parent or a parent who has just learned that they maybe soon will become a grieving parent? Like, what do you say in those situations? And I genuinely don't know. And I feel like the trainings that I get and reading people's research on it says so much that it's not about what you say, it's just the fact that you are there and you are are listening and you are an empathetic presence. But also there's that urge of like, if you're sitting there with a parent, that you want to be able to fix it, you know? It's hard to sit with people in feelings like that because you just want to alleviate it. And that even is something that I'm still struggling with, in the sense of like, I am a supportive role, and also families don't know me for all too long. You know, like, sure, I can provide maybe some emotional support and I can navigate having those conversations and navigate like doctors talking to families and things like that, but also like my support means nothing compared to like a best friend, or you know, your spouse or your parents, like people who mean a lot to you. And so I think sometimes I get caught up thinking that in my head of like, what am I doing here? Like just feeling like at a loss of words, feeling like because I can't fix this, like what is my role? And that's like genuinely a big learning curve that I've had to face, and I still am in the middle of it. Like I'm still learning because this isn't something that I have dealt with before, that like has been in a role of mine before. And so some ways like day to day that this can come up sometimes is that like doctors will reach out to the social workers to set up conferences between the medical team and the family. Sometimes they're just done routinely whenever a kid is medically complex, and sometimes these are done as an environment to share news with the family. I don't know what the like point of all of this was. I just feel like that's a portion of my job that I don't talk about as much in the day-to-day, because like how do you come onto a vlog camera after a day has happened and be like, yeah, I had to sit in a room while a doctor broke the news to a parent that like their child is brain dead or something like that. Like just I don't know how to talk about it, and I'm learning how to be a supportive role there, but it is just something that is so heavy. And also I keep telling myself like, if I can make this hard time just a little bit easier for a family, then that's worth it. But it's just the fact that like it can be such a hard time. I'm gonna go before this thunderstorm like blows us away. But thanks for joining this in-depth week in my life. I hope you enjoyed it, and there will be more like this coming soon. My plan is to do them at least monthly. That's the goal. So if you enjoy it, let me know. Subscribe before you go, and I'll see you next time.